I'd like to introduce Matt Bramley and Sam O'Neill from Freshworks, who are going to take us into the tooling side of things and see how this all really works. Thanks, Matt. Sam, over to you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Mark. We'll just pull up my screen. No. Brilliant. I'm hoping you can all see that okay.
Yeah, all good.
Lovely. It's a pleasure to speak with you all this morning. So thank you for listening, and I hope you've enjoyed the session so far. As a brief introduction, my name's Sam O'Neill, and I work for a company called Freshworks, who some of you may be familiar with. For those who have not, Freshworks is a Gartner recognized and ITIL aligned AI-driven IT and enterprise service management platform. What does that mean? So our platform is a government-approved software that enables IT and other teams across the enterprise, such as HR, facilities, finance, etc., to modernize, and efficiently deliver service experiences using a set of technical capabilities that align to ITIL practices with AI and automation there. So a bit of a mouthful, but hopefully that makes sense. Our platform is currently used by 78,000 customers globally, including household names like ITV, Travis Perkins, NHS England, and Disney. And today, my colleague Matt Bramley and I are with you to share the perspective from a technology vendor on this topic. So we're here to talk about and showcase part of our AI service management offering, which is called Freddy AI. I'm not too sure what it is with vendors, but we always coin them with some brilliant names. So ours is called Freddy AI, which is built into the Freshservice Enterprise Service Management Platform. And I'd like to start the session with this statement. So by 2027, Gartner predicts that 50% of AI projects at IT service desks will be abandoned. So really interested. We had some great sort of talks earlier and a lot of feedback in the comments. But who here has commenced a service management AI project or a project at the service desk? Feel free to drop some of your comments. And for those who've had some successes, feel free to brag about them in the chat. We'd love to hear about those. But equally, for those who haven't had as much success, what are some of the blockers that you've incurred? Is it to do with perhaps navigating the political sort of stakeholders, trying to get buy-in? Is it some technical aspects? I'd be really, really interested to get some feedback, and we'll hold on for 20, 30 seconds just while you drop those in the comments. Whilst you're doing that, so where does this sort of statistic come from? So there was a recent Gartner survey that found many IT leaders continue to face challenges when it comes to proving the value of Gen AI to the business. So despite an average spend of $1.9 million on Gen AI initiatives in 2024 amongst those that responded to the survey, less than 30% of those IT leaders actually reported that their CEOs were happy with the AI investment return. And actually, what they found was that lower maturity organizations were expecting difficulty in often experiencing difficulty in identifying suitable use cases, or were exhibiting unrealistic expectations for some of their initiatives. And on the flip side of things, many mature organizations meanwhile found it was quite difficult to find the right resourcing levels, to find the right skills, etc., to actually deliver and manage some of these projects, which seemed as, I suppose, challenges on different sides of the spectrum. The AI and the Gartner hype cycle is another interesting concept. So this is Gartner's graphical representation of the maturity, phase of adoption, public perception, and recognized business value of AI technologies. And it helps organizations to understand where different AI innovations are on the path to becoming mainstream. So almost like considering why they are where they are, what these innovations mean in the context of the overall like AI landscape. Phase one really is the technology trigger. So it's when a new technology attracts attention. I'm sure over the last year, many of you have been using the likes of ChatGPT, whether it's in a professional or personal setting, have been amazed how quickly and easily it can help you to write a poem to a dear friend or a speech at a family wedding, as an example. And phase two is then the peak of inflated expectations. And where Gartner almost suggests is that where we're at the moment is this trough of disillusionment, and it's where we've reached this point where maybe the technology isn't yet living up to the exaggerated expectations, and many organizations are beginning these projects or are actually delivering the projects and maybe realizing that the results or the ease of implementing the technology isn't what they quite initially thought out to be. So the research ultimately has identified there's a considerable disconnect between maybe the perceived and actual agentic AI vendors. There was an overview assessment from Gartner looking at thousands of different types of vendors, and they found that actually there was only about 130 vendors which they deemed as really operating in this agentic AI space. So you may be maybe sort of familiar with the phrase agentic washing, which is sort of being passed around quite a lot at the moment within the industry, especially within the sort of technology space. And AI agentic washing refers to the rebranding of existing products such as like AI assistants or RPA chatbots, and actually some vendors are just rebranding these as agentic AI capabilities, irrespective of their actual technical capabilities. So yeah, there's a lot going on in the industry and a lot to manage within perceptions within business around actually what is the resource implications of delivering AI capabilities. And the third point actually, which is on the sort of the third pillar of this piece of research, is the AI agency gap. So this brings us to what Gartner references. On the right hand side, you see the human agency. On the left, you see deterministic chatbots in the light blue, and in the middle is where most LLM-based assistants sit today. So it certainly highlights there's a discrepancy between this expectation, reality, and where we need to get to achieve the true agentic experiences. And as a technology partner, Freshworks, our approach is to bridge this gap as much as possible with the innovations we deliver. And I'll be honest, we still have a long way to go. However, what we can offer today are a set of tools that enable IT teams to easily and quickly build a level of maturity with AI and automation. So if you're an organization that is commencing this journey or building maturity, Freshservice is an excellent offering for you to partner with. Now, at Freshworks, when we began building our Freddy AI offering in 2021, we took a conscious decision that we wanted our end products to uncomplicate AI for our clients, which is in line with our ethos about being uncomplicated and as easy to use as possible. And for AI to be really a seamless experience rather than something that is seen as perhaps more complex or that requires teams of architects to build, maintain, and deploy. And we really don't want to fall into that 50% of AI projects that are abandoned that Gartner has called out as a big statement. So thousands of our clients are now using our AI product offering. So we have our Freddy AI agent, which is what we're here to talk about today. And that is the ability for the AI to navigate human interactions with employees. We also have our Freddy AI Copilot offering, which uses typical as a sort of, as you'd imagine with a Copilot tool, helps you to automate or partially automate about 9 or 10 different use cases across typical processes that we see when handling tickets and responding to requests for service or incidents. And then the final point is the insights. So actually, how can we leverage AI to help you access data easily, more understand trends in your data and take proactive decisions? So let's get on to the Freddy AI agent. So around this time last year, Freddy AI agent became generally available for our clients, and like I said, today is already used by thousands globally. And there's really three key points to note about this offering. So firstly, it's easy to implement. There's a 4-step, 10-minute process to actually install the AI agent. And then it's really a matter of the source data that you have in your knowledge library or your SharePoint repository. Secondly, it handles human interactions without intervention, so it can engage in a variety of languages. It can analyze and respond to images, and it's fairly intuitive. But we'll bring that to life in the next part of the session. And finally, behind Freddy AI Agent is a relatively complex security framework, which we refer to as Freddy Guardian, which governs the controls and policies for data security. And I know that's been mentioned a lot of times throughout this session. It's certainly something that, as a vendor, we recognise as our responsibilities. How can we help our clients to utilise the benefits of AI in a secure manner? So you've heard me bang on about our ethos for simple, easy to use and uncomplicated AI, and this case study is a brilliant summary. So the Office for Students has roughly 500 staff, so it isn't by any means a large enterprise. And given its public sector roots, it's fair to acknowledge that they certainly have budget constraints. And they implemented the Freddie AI agent across a 2-month process, which involved a 10 to 15-minute install of the product, a review and undertake of their current knowledge library. Then they rolled out a 4-week pilot across a subset of teams within their organization. And essentially what they did was they recorded and tracked the types of interactions and queries that they came towards the virtual agent. Then there was a period for about 2 weeks of reflecting, understanding the data, and they once again then reiterated on that knowledge library. And within that, across that 2-month process, they then rolled out this capability to their entire organization. So 500 staff were using this within 2 months. And the results, I think, speak for themselves, especially when they're reducing resolution times by such a drastic amount. We've obviously, we've got a lot of data that sort of sits in the background as well. So we've undertaken a few benchmark reports, and actually, it's not just this particular customer that's seeing these results. We are seeing these across. This was undertaken about 78 Freshworks customers, but we recently did a benchmark report which analysed over 10,000 responses from different customers, and the results are offering similar sort of findings as well. So Matt, over to you. How does the Freddie AI agent work?
Perfect. Thanks, Sam. So just check you can hear me.
All good.
Okay, this room is very echoey. So apologies if that's the case. Yeah, so we're really, we're not going to get into too much of the details in terms of the diagrams. We'll dive into the demo shortly. But yeah, we've put in place this kind of 6-step model around really how the Freddie AI agent is able to engage with end users to deliver support that they may need, and then underpinned by the workflow automation and orchestration built into Freshservice, how we can shift from not just knowledge-based deflection and resolution, but also powering actual outcomes, right, that our end users need. And then obviously step 6 is that feedback, right, that we can capture from those end users. So in a section, if we read it, on this graph, we see Teams and Slack, probably the 2 most common interfaces that the end users are used to using, and being able to deploy the AI agent to these channels, we see drives significant adoption. So we saw there on that case study from the Office for Students, for example, 45% reduction in email as a channel. And we know that email is a difficult channel to manage because typically we don't get the insight that we need. It introduces a bit of a back and forth, right, and things get lost. So by shifting away from email as a channel and shifting towards these conversational channels, we can meet people where they are, which drives overall adoption of processes that we have in place. And a conversational AI agent can capture the right information from our end user to help us to resolve their query first time, and if needed, to pass it over to the agent with the context that's needed to help the agent as well. And then the search and retrieve model, right? So Freshworks, we avail of an RAG, retrieval augmented generative model, which means that we'll see shortly in the demo that we can deliver all of those workflows, whether that be knowledge content, whether that be the service catalog, and infuse that with employee data from our integrations to deliver that self-service through Freshservice, but surface to our end users, as we say, in those conversational channels. We can search and retrieve that insight. We can then run workflows and ultimately automate some of those outcomes. So I think, Sam, I'm going to take over the sharing. I think it's the last slide that we've got here, and we'll do a demo of the platform in action.
Thanks, Matt. And just whilst you're bringing your screen up, please, if you have any questions, queries, or points to note, feel free to drop them in the comments section, and I'll be monitoring.
Perfect. And also, I've got to keep an eye on the time. So everyone should be able to see my screen, and I'll start the demo here because everybody, I think, is used to seeing this type of service experience Right, oh, I'm looking up and I think I'm frozen. Can you hear me all right, Sam?
All good, all good.
All good. So everyone, I think, is used to this type of service experience, right? And a unified end user portal where end users can access self-service FAQ content, raise incidents, request services, and so on. Check the status of key services, and indeed, I always highlight, in Freshservice, we, as Sam mentioned, are delivering unified enterprise service management. So not just restricted to IT, but those other teams that provide support to the end users in our organization, be they HR, finance, payroll, facilities, and so on. So we're all used to this type of experience and delivering, some variety of it within our service organization. I want to take a step away from there and touch on what Sam said about the 50% failure rate in these AI initiatives, and lots of reasons behind those, but chiefly is the difficulties with getting the AI properly enabled and properly adopted. And this again is where our ethos really comes to the fore of uncomplicating the access to this type of capability within the system. So what you'll see here is I've got those 3 pillars of the AI that we mentioned. We've got our Freddy AI agent, which we'll focus on primarily today. We've also got our Freddy AI Copilot. And finally, you've got our Freddy AI Insights, which is taking all the data that flows through your service desk and proactively surfacing relevant insights around any changes in the environment or anything that you see that might indicate that there is a problem. As you can see in Freshservice, you've got a couple of things I want to highlight. First of those is that it's simply a case of toggling them on. So no complexity around bringing your own model or managing and training of the LLMs. It's incredibly straightforward. As Sam said, a couple of steps. I have to authenticate into my Teams or Slack environment, and indeed also with my emails, but I can toggle it on, and straight away the AI agent is learning and effectively is delivering all those services that we already have built in to our Freshservice environment, to our service desk architecture, through our AI agent in Teams, which is brilliant. And then you'll also notice, it not so relevant for the content today, but worth mentioning, you see by Copilot, for example, I can toggle these on feature by feature. One thing that facilitates is actually we are doing the heavy lifting of bringing to our customers best-in-class AI models through our Freddy AI Guardian, which Sam mentioned. What does that mean? It means that actually we are leveraging both internal models or best-in-class external models with all of the relevant trust and security measures in place, but actually we can choose the best-in-class AI model for the given use case. So for example, if we're generating solution articles, we may be leaning on some external content for those because we recognize that there's good content out there. For a summary generator or something that's strictly internal, again, we've got a slightly different way of approaching it. So by use case, all of this is handled by Freshworks. All you need to do is toggle it on, and you can be reassured that the AI is secure and built in and trained only on your data and processes. So when I shift across to Microsoft Teams, you can see in here, I've got my service bot. And, we heard from Toby earlier, right? Brand this up to match the guidelines of your organization. I really like the piece that was mentioned around, not pretending that this is a person, right? Employees are, they're used now to engaging with AI across our professional and personal lives. And so, we're okay to recognize that this is AI. And so I'm going to show you a couple of use cases in here. So first of all, actually, we can see here already that we've had in here is that the AI is able to actually understand. I've got an image which we've uploaded, a screenshot, and now we've got a multimodal AI built in to our AI agent. So actually, it's able to recognize the screenshot, read the content that's been uploaded, and to provide some residual steps for us to go ahead and resolve that VPN issue. Now, we've got the option to go ahead and raise a ticket, which we could do shortly. But what's nice about the AI as well is that, as I can see, it's showing the sources. It's using that RAG model. And what that means is that it's trained, yes, it's AI generated, but it's securely gated around the content in your knowledge base, in your system. It's not pulling from external sources that might be hallucinating. It's not taking a guess if it hasn't got the right answer. It's only going to use your content in your knowledge base. Now, if I've got an end user who chooses to actually engage in a different language, and My French is not too good, but even I can pull this out of the bag, hopefully. It automatically can transition to a different language. And actually what's nice about Fresh Service is that we are operational in a range of different languages. You can see here I've got the content in English and actually also in German. I haven't got any French content in my knowledge base. However, it's able to automatically translate that, detect the language of the end user, and to go ahead and provide support in the language of their choice. And I think, as you know, a few people have mentioned, we don't want to put barriers in place to engaging with the service desk. So frankly, if the end user does need to go ahead and log this incident, then we can see that actually it's able to not only to pull through and we can raise the incident directly from Microsoft Teams, we can also actually, it's pulling through that summary, which is going to be visible to the agent so that they're not going to have to repeat themselves, right? There's not going to need to be a back and forth. I think there's a bit of a background noise. If everyone could go on mute, that would be brilliant. So I've gone ahead and submitted my issue, which we can pick up shortly. And we talk about how AI agents may go ahead and support the resolution as well of some queries that we see. But another challenge that sometimes people talk about, especially when we're speaking to customers, is that when we're delivering support through this portal type experience, is yes, we can make it very clear where people should go to request services, get support, fix issues, and so on. But a lot of the time, end users don't know, is this an issue? Is it an incident? Should I be requesting a service right through the service catalog? They don't quite know where to go. And the AI agent can solve all of that because all of our service catalog items, incident processes, and so on have been natively mapped. So I've got an example beyond just IT, right? I need an employment verification. But this is something that's actually out of our service catalog, right? It's not coming from our knowledge base. And I don't think I need to spell it right. I'm just a bit pedantic. So we've switched over to a totally different topic. Again, the service bot does a bit of thinking, and it's going to map that service catalog item, but through a conversational format. Now, if previously I had an incident, right, it's flagging me with the ability to log an issue. So it takes away that burden from the end user having to know where I have to go and raise my issue or who to raise it with. Then actually I go ahead. Oh, my Zoom thing's in the way. Let me move that screen share thing. There you go. I provide the reason of verification. Perhaps I need it for, a mortgage application. And this could be any service catalog item that might come through, right? So I might be requesting a new piece of kit, I might be requesting access to a particular platform or tool, right? All those service catalog items. And there we go again. It's intelligent enough to start asking me the questions based on that. So what's my bank? I'm going to say NatWest. And my address, I'm just going to say one. No. There we go. And as you can see, so it's taken us through that flow. And actually now the request has been summarized. And I've fired it in. And away we go. There we go. And we've got a few pieces. Actually, we can see the document request has been fulfilled. So we can actually access the document directly from the ticket. The Fresh Service workflow automator, as we talked about, that workflow engine, is able to pick up that ticket that's been raised, that service request, through the AI agent, and actually go ahead and take some action autonomously through the Fresh Service workflow automator to deliver that outcome to the end user. So let's go ahead and take a bit of a look at that on the end user side. How are we doing for time? We've actually got maybe 4 or 5 minutes left, so I'm going to be quite quick. Question on the chat from Marlene, actually from Samantha first. When raising a ticket, will it convert it back to the agent preferred language? Absolutely. So that will be through our Copilot offering. So actually, if you see here in my Copilot, I've got live translations for agents, so you can enable a truly global service desk. So actually, the agent would see the reply in their preferred language. And actually, if it moves between agents, you've got different preferred languages, then they would all be able to see it in their native language. And then a question from Marlene as well. Would this service bot analyze and take into account all the other past incidents and requests me and other users had on the topic? I think I've read that slightly wrong. Would it analyze and take into account all the past incidents and requests? Great question. So I think that's certainly the direction of the travel in the industry. At the moment, we are kind of empowering. Let's take a look at this. But actually, the way that tends to work at the moment, Marlene, is through our Copilot. So the Copilot can flag similar incidents and requests, either from the same end user or from different end users that might want to be grouped and clustered together. So we do that kind of cluster analysis on the agent side, rather than on the end user side. And there we go. And a point from Ben as well, which we might maybe, there's quite a lot of questions coming through. Actually, maybe we'll pick these up in the Q&A because we might run short of time for the demo. So I'll pick a few of these up afterwards. But let's pick this one quickly. So you can see we've got our employment verification letter request, and the system has gone ahead, added a public note, and actually the request has been autonomously fulfilled via the system to provide that verification letter using a template that we've got set up in Freshservice. Again, this is where that governance comes in to play. What we can see is that there may have been approvals that have been set up, etc. And these are delivered through the Freshworks workflow automator. So maybe I'll take a step back for those who may not be familiar. But in Freshservice, this is the kind of engine that drives automation across the organization. You can see here that I can run workflows across incidents, problems, alerts, any of those modules in the platform, assets in terms of their hygiene and so on. But when it comes to the AI agent, typically we're dealing with incidents. And, a classic scenario you might face is around routing it to the right team. This example here, I've got a piece around actually resetting the user's password. So again, a good example of that autonomous activity that can be taken through Freshservice, because actually in this workflow automator, we don't just have the ability to take action within the Freshservice platform. I just need to put it into draft mode, which is taking a moment for some reason. There we go. But you can see here, we can actually take action within platforms like Azure as well, or Microsoft Teams, right, to drive communications. We can do things like reset cloud provisioning and so on directly from within that workflow automator. So that collaboration between the AI agent, which is what's facing our end users, but then the governance that's wrapped around the way we deliver automation through the workflow automator means that we can automate outcomes, but we've still got those guardrails in place. We've got confidence that the workflows are set in the way that we would like them to be delivered. So that's the kind of combination that we're seeing working at the moment. The final piece I wanted to cover, just because we're about to kind of run short of time, is a few people have mentioned measuring the success of these initiatives, reporting upwards. There's a organizational prerogative to deliver value through AI and to be able to report that upwards. Again, Freshservice has native reporting, which is what we call these curated reports. So out of the box, you're getting good insight into the performance of your AI agent within the organization. We can see that our ticket deflection trend in this environment is at around 50%, which is kind of similar to the outcomes we're seeing in our benchmarking, right? Around 50% or above deflection, obviously due to, based on the quality of your processes and knowledge base. And, we can see, a variety of trends over time, active users, etc. Obviously, this is a demo environment. I think people usually say unhelpful just to run the demo flow, right? When we raise the ticket, but usually the outcomes are significantly improved, as you say, around 50% resolution. And again, that insight into where we can be better. So there are always going to be topics that we aren't successfully handling, and we're getting that insight. I can rank and request more of these so that we can go and upgrade and improve our processes over time. But the key is that when we first get started and set these up, we are automatically getting started with a great sounding board, a great starting point, a good base based on the processes we already have. And then it's very intuitive to build those up over time. I think that's kind of all I wanted to cover in terms of the demo and in terms of the time. A little bit of a flavor of how we think about AI, end user facing AI at Freshservice. I'm going to pause and maybe take a look at a few of the questions, and then we can go from there. Quite a lot of questions.
Yeah, I've started to try and answer some of the comments. Where we're up to at the moment. So the latest one from Ben Clark was asking around whether the service bot could be available on the portal, and I mentioned how it is available later on in the year. Mentioned I was asking around integration with incidents and problems. Perhaps Ben, if you could maybe elaborate on that, if that's okay, and we'll come back to you as well. Adam Toms has asked, where is the data stored? Can it be stored and controlled in your own Azure instance? Do you want to take that one, Matt?
Yeah, good question. Where is the data stored? Can we store it and control via your own Azure instance in terms of the so we don't have the option to sort of bring your own model. So if you've got your own connection to a model through OpenAI or through Azure, all the information I believe is stored within your Freshservice environment. So yeah, perhaps want to follow up on with some of the detail. But yeah, maybe we'll take a note of that, Tom, and we can sorry, Adam. Adam, we can follow up with you directly with some more info on that. And we've got a question from Kawaja around detecting recurring incidents and automatically converting them into problem records. What specific criteria or thresholds does it use, and how can those settings be customized or tuned for your environment? Great question. And Freddie is, well set to detect those recurring incidents. What our approach, in common with a lot of things we've heard today, is that it's really important to have humans in the loop, and we believe in human first AI. So the way that we approach it, and if we had a bit of time, maybe I could show this. I just want to make sure we stick to the agenda. But in terms of the detection and suggestion, that's through our Copilot offering. So that's a suggestion that's delivered to the team who handle these queries, and then they would be the ones who would go ahead, raise a problem, major incident, or so on. So it's at the discretion of the team handling the queries. Again, important to have humans in the loop. I'm going to pause there because I think, Mark, we go to a more formal sort of Q&A at this point.
Yes,
is that right?
Thanks very much, Matt and Sam. I think that that's worked very well. It's given us a real practical view of how many of these features are supported within the tool set. So yeah, if we could invite the other speakers back, Mark, Jason, if you're available, and really just throw the floor open. Don't all go off mute at the same time, because we've still got 150 people on this call. But by all means, if you have a point to make or a question, do come off mute and join in the discussion, or put your comment in the chat, and we'll get the speakers to comment on them. Any experiences with AI to date? Anything you've heard this morning maybe that you fundamentally disagree with? I noticed one little debate going on about customer service versus AI. So if there are any strong views or just questions or comments, please let's have them, and we'll take the discussion on from there. Mark, perhaps we'll go back to you, as we kicked off with you in the first place. Anything you've heard in the subsequent sessions that you'd like to come back on?
Oh, sure.
Or...
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the questions that actually it came up, and actually after the great demo we just saw, it kind of made me start thinking about one of the questions I received a little bit earlier. The question, because I was talking about dynamic workflows, and especially as we go through, say, incidents or problems or updating configuration items and those kinds of things. There was a question that asked, are there any suggestions on how to better represent and visualize living workflows, right? And so as I've been thinking about that, as I was watching the demo from Sam and Matt, and the discussion that Jason was giving us about the agent, it again, not being an AI expert on my end, what I would envision as on the business side is, these layered workflow maps, right? There's a baseline process flow layered with decision points, state diagrams, and maybe even have, digital twins of the workflow. I'm not quite sure how AI has really looked at it from that perspective. But I thought I'd kind of bring that up a little bit because I'm not sure how that works. But if you think about it, the AI learns, right? And it learns through this model. And why can't AI also modify my workflows as it learns about certain kinds of situations and can remember, oh, here was the best path that I could take for this type of incident, security related incident versus say somebody can't get access to a SharePoint site. I just thought I'd kind of bring that up. I'm not, and I wanted to make sure that we answer that because it was asked earlier. I don't have the technical answer to that, but I certainly think that maybe looking at something like a digital twin might make sense. If you think about it, you represent a workflow in a simulation type of dashboard where you got inputs, those may be tickets or metrics coming in, and it changes that workflow in real time. Because one of the suggestions I made was, hey, be careful, get away from these static workflows that were forced into a certain path every time an incident comes up. And then we have an unusual situation in which might require some type of escalation, some type of different path on that. I just thought I'd open that up because I thought the Freshworks capability made a lot of sense to me on how it did that. I just didn't know, Matt, Sam, I'm not throwing you in the middle here, but you guys clearly have looked a lot at workflows, and Jason, you did as well, especially with your agent as well.
Absolutely. Anybody want to come back on the visualization aspect?
Go on, Matt.
Go on. I came off beat. Yeah, I'm not sure. I think in terms of, I think always, Sam talked about the kind of, the height of expectations and then where we are in that hype cycle, right? I think that's one thing I'm always talking to prospects and customers about is, navigating their expectations around what AI can deliver, right? So I think the vision you set, Mark, is compelling, right? It's really, that's the direction of travel we're in. I think the way we're thinking about that at Freshworks, right, is about a lot of organizations we speak to certainly are struggling with the idea that, even to change a workflow manually, right, by an individual can take them days, weeks, months, right? Yeah. In Freshworks, we're really focused on helping get that down to seconds, minutes, and hours, right? So just that level of agility is quite transformative, right? And I guess it feeds back into that governance question, right? Which is, I think that I quite like that model whereby the AI agent faces the end user, but we've still got confidence that we control our workflows, right? And so we've got the knowledge that says, or the reporting that says, hey, this is working, this is not working, let's go. And this is where the humans are in the loop managing those workflows, right? So we're all about giving the service desk team the tools and the ability to do that, taking away the need for consultants or third parties, but crucially, they are still the custodians of those workflows, right? So I'm sure that AI will be at a point where digital twins and recommendations come into play and so on. I think we're not quite there yet, but
Right, I agree.
That's probably that's
I agree.
the direction
Which
of
is why
travel.
I didn't have the exact answer on it. But and I think it's important though, as we're talking about AI agents, and we treat these as humans, right? They're making decisions for us. The one thing they don't have is emotion, right? Certain things like that. But the foundations of what you were just talking about don't change, right? They still have levels of authority, right? We still put controls on them. There are certain decisions that we used to always say, hey, don't swim in water that's too deep for you, meaning don't make this decision if you need a stronger swimmer for this decision. I think that's the key, is kind of that workflow element that that our agents understand and recognize, hey, this is a decision, even though I have autonomy and I'm allowed to make decisions and go down certain paths. I think the controls of at what point does that agent know they're about to exceed their level of authority? And does that agent know the escalation procedures? Meaning, hey, do I send this to another agent, right? Or does this actually, at this point, does it go to a human or a group of humans to do? And I think that's kind of that next point is then we as humans, right, then say, okay, there are some modifications we need to make to the control structure, because all of these decisions, which is interesting, right, these are all auditable, which goes back to my old days of an auditor, show me. And now we have the logs and we have the information that shows those decisions. And that's where it takes some human eyes to now make decisions on based on, are we willing to accept this risk, right? Because we see it all the time when we may decide to take a risk, right? Someone says, well, if that risk happens, here are the outcomes of that risk. And we may say, you know what, we're willing to accept that risk, or right, we may avoid it, or we may determine to put other controls in place. So I think it's that dynamic workflowing of first looking at what the levels of authority are, right? Delegation of that authority, and what those escalation procedures are. I agree with you. I think it was a great demo. It was a great way to look at that from Freddie's perspective.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Mark. Ben Clark, did you have your hand up there? Sorry.
Yeah, no problem, Mark. It was actually a question for the other Mark. So, we're resorting to talking about governance here and obviously jumping into driverless cars.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's is this because we just don't know? And
Mm-hmm.
You're saying almost and we're talking about digital trust, we're putting trust into the car or the brand of the car as such almost, because it's almost like we're blind.
Mm-hmm.
I always use the analogy, I'm trying to use the analogy of, going to like when you're a kid and you're playing a video game, right? You're button bashing to, because you don't know what you're doing on the level at the time. But what about the people that just don't want to just jump into these cars in the first place? Is that wrong? Is that sensible?
Nope. I agree. I had this conversation with my late mother. So do you trust an organization, or do you trust a service because you want to, or because you have to? So let's take Equifax, the Equifax breach, for example. Several years ago, major credit agency. And so my mom called me. She said, Mark, you talk about security, you talk about trust all the time. She said, I got this notice that my credit information has been compromised. And I said, well, Mom, I got the same letter, right? And she said, why is it that they have all this personal information about me? She said, I never gave them permission to store that sensitive data about me. I said, Mom, it's not that, you can't make the decision on whether or not you're going to trust them. You have to trust them. So there are some things you need to do as a consumer, right, to harden yourself in terms of, cybersecurity hygiene, those kinds of things. Likewise, it may go to the technology. You talked about the driverless cars. I'll be honest with you, I was very nervous the first time I did, but I was very comfortable with the brand. So branding has a lot to do with this as well. How your organization, not just the company, but how have you branded your IT service management organization, right? How you've branded your service desk, those kinds of things. Interestingly, on branding, so just quick story for if you don't mind, Marriott hotel chain. We all know Marriott, right? I've been a member of Marriott for years, and Marriott has had a couple of cybersecurity incidents. A couple of those incidents I've been a victim of, right? And so what's interesting is I'm still a fan of Marriott, right? Marriott's even been fined under the GDPR, big money, but I still trust Marriott. And now I have friends who, at the first sign of Marriott distress, left Marriott. Right? Said, we're no longer going to Marriott before. Oh no, they had an incident. We're not going back to them. But I still trust Marriott. Why is that? Well, a couple things. Number one is Marriott was open and transparent with me. Marriott said, here are your rights. Now, this doesn't have anything to do with agentic AI at this point. This is digital trust, right? So I may not trust some of the systems that they use, but I trust Marriott. Now, let's contrast that to another scenario. Here in the U.S., we had several years ago, you may have heard, we had a major breach, and it really created this fervor around third-party risk management. And it was a breach at a large retail organization called Target. Don't expect everybody to know it, but Target, big retail, you may be familiar with it. So anyway, I was a victim of Target, right? and my credit card was compromised at Target. And again, I get the message from Target telling me, all about this thing. So do I still trust Target? No. In fact, since that breach, I have not gone back to Target. Now, why is it that I still trust Marriott? Right. And I've been violated a couple of times with Marriott, but I will never spend another dollar at Target. Again, this is not personal. It's just I'm trying to protect myself. Well, let's go back to the way I was treated when this happened with Marriott. Marriott said, "Here are your rights." Target said, "Sorry about that." It just was a different type of thing for me. So I think branding has a lot to do with that, and the technology too. So let's take another thing on technology from a person to person perspective, right? My son, he lived and worked in China for a couple of years. He was doing a university professor kind of swap, and before he left for China, he said, "Dad, the only way you and I can communicate with each other is through a messaging app called WeChat." Right? Not sure if anybody's familiar with WeChat, very, very heavily leveraged by the Chinese government. He said, "By the way, Dad, we cannot talk on Facebook Messenger. We can't talk on WhatsApp, right? And we can only talk on WeChat." Right. In that case, I completely trusted the relationship with my son, right? I trust everything and on all of our interactions. But in that case, I did not trust the technology. So this goes back to the whole driverless car thing, right? And sometimes it may be out of necessity. And in those cases, a lot of times you have to harden yourself and more hygiene. Back to my mother again. My mother did not have any credit cards. My mother used cash. She would write checks. She would go into the bank teller and get cash. This is up till she left us here about a year ago. She refused to use an ATM. She was a Wells Fargo banker. She loved Wells Fargo Bank, absolute trust in Wells Fargo, but she wasn't touching any of their technology, right? I gave her a new laptop. She had to trust it. So I said, "Mom, here's a great new laptop." It was an old Surface Pro, not old. It was So we were going to get her on the internet, get her Facebook. We could share pictures, all these great things. Well, we found out later on that that laptop that I gave her had never connected to the internet in the entire time she had it. As a matter of fact, that laptop turned into one of the most expensive solitaire games I've ever seen in my life. She didn't trust the technology, but she trusted the person that gave it to her. The whole point here is it goes down to that. Do you trust because you want to or you have to? We've all been in a situation where our phone is about to die, right? And we're losing battery. We're in an airport, and the only way we can charge that phone is by plugging it into a public USB charging point, right? And we all know, I'm not quite sure. There's a lot of risk. But we may be willing to take that risk in order to get a couple of bars in our battery. So I know I've kind of overdone it a little bit, Ben, but I think it's a really good point. There's an emotional thing that says, do you trust because you want to or you have to? One of the reasons I think this is important from agentic AI, especially from service management perspective, is are we building that trust through the interactions? Because that agent represents our brand. And that's why the humans need to come into place, because the agents can only look at the positive and negative, say social media posts, right? Hey, what's the or internal chatter? What's the overall feel of this service management organization? Because we all know, I mean, it's real. If we are we're delivering everything right, they don't trust us. Our consumers, our customers, external or even our trading partners. They'll find another way to get the service. Either it's shadow IT, some workaround, or they may say, "You know what, we don't trust them. We're going to outsource it to somebody else." So I know I gave you kind of a long answer on that, but I think from a business perspective, there are a lot of those factors I think that are key. And we link them back to business goals too, right? Are we an organization that says, "Hey, profit, 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 profit," or are we an organization that says save money, save money? Are we an organization that says customers king? Or are we a company that says, hey, we're okay losing customers as long as we're growing faster than we're losing? A lot of different styles there from a strategic perspective. So I've carried on quite a bit. Hope I answered your question. If not, maybe it triggered some follow-ons.
Thanks, Mark. You got some great stories there. Do you have any other questions? Don't see any other hands up at all at the moment. I wonder what our sons and daughters will give us in years to come that we won't understand or use properly. It's amazing how things change from one generation to the next, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. It was great information from everybody. And I think there's a lot of takeaways that a lot of folks, a lot of calls to action coming out of this discussion, I believe.
So has anybody had any really negative experiences with AI that haven't been covered in the discussion today?
Not from a internal IT service management, but more from a customer service facing situation. I don't recall, somebody here might know this, but I know there was an interesting story about one of the airlines. I don't know if it was Canadian Airlines or not, but anyway, there was a chat taking place between a customer and an AI chat, asking about their rights. There were some flights either canceled or they were delayed, something like that. And the actual, in the conversation, they were told all these things that they were eligible to have based on their discomfort and delays and so on with this flight. Well, as it turns out, this person copied the entire conversation, went back to the airline, said, "Here's what you told me. How do I get this now?" And the company said, "No, that was incorrect information. That was not a human talking to you. That was an AI agent talking to you, and they gave you bad information." So they went to court and won because that agent represented the company, and just like the agents that we've been talking about today, with Vodafone and with Freshworks, they represent that organization, which builds that brand, which builds that whole brand. And it's just kind of interesting. I'm not sure if it's a horror story or not, but this goes back to checking your use cases from a business perspective. I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned that we give information to somebody that may not be accurate or correct, and then we're legally right, because a representative of my company, even though it's not human, they represent my organization. They gave a commitment that I legally am bound to deliver. So those are use cases that we think about, and these are things being talked about in boardrooms right now. What's interesting is right now the big struggle with a lot of, especially with boards. As we're going into, kind of finishing our Q3 board meetings, I was in the last quarter. I was at a board meeting where the discussion was around, hey, what are we going to do about our policy about using generative AI in the organization? And they were leaning towards no chat GPT, those kinds of things. So I thought it was ironic that they were leaning towards no chat GPT, right, for users or for IT to be able to use. So one of the board directors was on his phone. He said, "Well, here's a good idea for a policy statement." And one of the other members said, "Where'd you get that?" Chat GPT. They're talking about banning AI, but they're using AI to create the very policy that would ban the use of that whole thing. Pretty ironic story. Oh, Ben, British Motors event tomorrow. Where is that?
Yeah, indeed. So yeah, that's our ITIL case study day, and
Cool.
that's a really good venue. It's a great museum. So actually, there's still some spaces on that event. If anybody wanted to sign up, just let us know.
Very cool. Yeah.
Okay, it feels as if we're coming to a conclusion now. So unless there's any final comments, I'd just like to thank Mark and Jason and Matt and Sam for all your input today, and for all the other comments and opinions and questions that have been raised during the day. This has been one of our biggest SM forums in a while, and it's great to see not just how much interest, but how many different opinions and perspectives there are on this really important topic. So thanks for joining us today, and we'll be sure to be back with you soon with the request for feedback and with the slides that have been used today. So thanks again to our speakers, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks all.
Thanks to you too, Mark. Cheers.